Hope you're all doing well. Now, we're going to dive into the next part of the lecture, which is doing more with expressions. So we're going to start off with a quick little recap that will flow nicely into the beginning of tonight. Here's what I'm going to do. We'll get rid of this. And I will put down a square. Okay, and I'm going to need to move the anchor point for that square. I'm going to put it in the center. All right. So here's a reminder. I'll do P for position. If you want to add an expression, there's a little recap. Hold down Alt or Option and click the stopwatch you want to add it to. Then start adding in your expression. You could double click on it to auto-complete it. And then you finish up your expression in here. And that's it. That's how you add an expression. Plain and simple. Anything with a stopwatch, more or less, can have an expression added to it. To remove the expression, you just Alt or Option, hold that down while you click on the stopwatch again and it's gone. Also remember, you can add expressions and keyframes at the same time. So if I want to have this go up the screen like we did with the balloon, I just move this up. So there is the cube moving, and we want to add some sideways bobble to it. I hold down, I right click, and I choose separate dimensions. And I click off. I'm going to get rid of the X keyframe, so I only need to move it up and down. And then I can put that expression on only the X. So I hold down Alt or Option, click that stopwatch, add in my expression. And remember, you have to click outside of the expression field. Any extra returns or spaces or typos or wrong line breaks in your expression will not work. And there you can see, let me add a little bit more to it. Some sideways bobble while using the up and down keyframes. Let's move on to the next part of the lecture. All right, we loosely started talking about adjustment layers. So I'm going to have a text layer, and I'm going to have a shape layer. And I'm going to put an adjustment layer on top of both of them by going Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. The adjustment layer is on top. Any effects I put on the adjustment layer will affect every layer below it. So you don't need to be following along for this part. It's all just taking a look. So if I blur this out, everything below it is blurred. And anything above it will not be blurred, okay? So that's how adjustment layers work. You can put any effect on there you want, and it affects every layer below it. That's important to know. So I'm going to get rid of this effect, but keep my adjustment layer. Here's what we're going to do. We'll get rid of my text and keep my square. We learned about duplicating a layer where, if you duplicate a layer, it'll duplicate all the effects, the keyframes, your speed graph info, everything gets copied. Then we learned about splitting a layer by, duplicating is Command or Control D. Split duplicate is Command Shift D, or you can get there by going Edit, Split Layer. That's splitting a layer. We did splitting a layer to change the anchor point. And someone asked, well, you got an expression on there. One way is you could split the layer, but the more sophisticated way of adjusting an expression is with the slider. And I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to put a wiggle expression, holding down Alt or Option on the position. This will work with any expression, but you're going to have to figure out which number to highlight. And I'm going to go 5, 350, click out, and now I've got my motion. Suppose I only want that for a certain amount of time and to start at a certain time. So let's go start and end at a certain time and only be up for a little bit. That's where my adjustment layer is going to come in handy. And I am going to add into it the effect slider control. I'm just dragging that into my adjustment layer. And here is how I'm going to use a little bit of parenting, a little bit of expressions, and the slider control to have this wiggle start and stop when I want it to. All right, so all I'm going to need to do for this to work, I select the first number in my expression, the number of times per second. And then I'm going to pick whip to the word slider controller, right there, slider. So I'm going to pick whip with my expression. So first I've got to have only the first number selected. I selected it. I'm going to pick whip to the slider. I'm going to click off. I'm going to hit the space bar. Nothing happens. When you're using a slider, 0 is off, 1 is on. So I could say at 2 seconds, I'm going to want this to start animating on. So I'm going to go, let's say about a second, and I'm going to go from 0 to 1 because I click the stopwatch. And let's say I have this go for, see, now you can see the wiggle already working. Have it go for a couple seconds. I'm going to add another keyframe. So it's going 0, 1, 1, move my playhead, and go back to 0. So it's going off. Then it's going to slowly go into the expression from 0 to 1, stay at full strength for the expression, 1 to 1 here, and then gradually wind down 1 to 0, meaning off. So I'm going to hit the space bar so you can see how that works. And that's how you can use a slider to affect an expression to only work at a certain amount on your layer. Otherwise, it'll go the full length of your layer. Like that. So you'll have the recording of this to take a look at that again. But I'm just showing you how you can use the slider to start or stop your expression. I mean, you might go your whole career without ever using an expression, but it's doubtful. Expressions are a great way to save time when you're working. All right, so just to recap what I've said before, think of motion design as graphic design, but adding in time and space, all right? You're going to want your animation hierarchy and your information hierarchy. You want everything to make sense as it's coming in to the screen. We've covered expressions, parenting, pre-composing. Now I want to go a little bit into modes. So I want everyone to follow along to this. We're going to use the polygon tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to make 3 overlapping polygons. One's going to be red. They'll all be on their own layer. 1 red, 1 green, 1 blue. So I'll make my first polygon about this big. They're not going to move, so you don't have to worry about the playhead. And I'm going to name them by hitting the Enter key. So if I hit Command D to duplicate that, I can now move it. There's my overlap. I'll change the color to green. Name it green. And then duplicate that one. And I'll call this one blue. I'm going to put my red one on top. Like that. The next bit of this, take a look at my timeline down here that I'm circling. Am I in my switches or my modes? Switches are these little columns. So if you're ever unsure, click on toggle switches and modes and you'll see mode right here. You're going to want to be in your modes. And where it says normal, that is your blending mode. So just like in Photoshop and Illustrator, you can change the blending mode of your layers. So I'm going to make that top one. Let's try screen. And you can see how already as it interacts with what it overlaps, that changes its relation to what's below it. I'm going to change the blending mode on blue. Let's try hard mix. See? And then green, I'll do... Let's try multiply. Nah, don't really see a difference. Let's try divide. Nope. Probably we're not going to see green because green's on the bottom. Yep, green's on the bottom. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some type below it just to see if there's a difference. So I'm going to put that below green. Now I'm seeing a difference with some of the stuff below it. Oh, wrong layer. Yep. See, watch, if I go normal, you can't see the type below it. But now you can. So blending modes allow you to achieve a look and feel you normally cannot get without them. Print works off of CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and the key color, which is black. You don't use CMYK for anything but print. So all screen and display work is RGB, red, green, blue. And these are additive values. They work off of blending in light, okay? What I'm going to do is demonstrate this with an effect. You know what? No, you'll see this better with a photo. And the second I show you this, you'll realize you've seen this a million times over. All right, so I'm gonna bring in my tree. You can always go File, Import File, or double click on an empty space. I'm gonna drag the tree into the timeline and I'm gonna make it a lot bigger. Let's do about here so we can see the edges. Okay, on my tree, I'm gonna put an effect. Set channels. And what this is going to do, I'm going to go over to my effects controls. I can turn off the green and the blue. You can just follow, you can just watch the step, follow along for this if you want. So I only have my red channel. So if I hit Command D to duplicate that, I'm going to turn off the red on my duplicate. I'm going to turn on the green and keep the blue off. And I'm going to duplicate it. Whoops. That duplicated the effects, so that's still in my effects panel. I'm going to duplicate my tree one more time, and I'm going to turn the green off, and I'm going to turn the blue on. So what we've got going on is the top is just blue, the middle is just green, and the bottom is just red. Okay? And watch this, just like magic. I'm going to select all three of my layers, and I'm going to set them to an add blending mode. And now the image looks right again. That's what I mean. RGB is an additive color space. When colors overlap, they're going to create new colors rather than, you know, using ink in Photoshop. Now we've got our blue here and our red here. I'm going to hit P for position. I'm going to move these in the opposite direction the same amount. So if I go minus 60 here, I'm going to add 60 here. Like that. And already you're going to start seeing something happen. One second. So I'm going to click my stopwatches. I'm going to go a little bit. Go back to my original values. And then I'll go forward a little bit, and I'll do less this time. So for this one, instead of taking away 60, I'll take away 20. So it's a smaller change, and I'll add 20 here. And then I'll go a few frames forward, and I'll go back to 960 for each. This effect is called chromatic aberration. You see it all the time in motion design. When light hits some edges in nature, it splits the red and the green, red and the blue a little bit on it. Now you could do it with just a still like that, or you could animate it. But you've all seen that effect. It's very used in everything these days. Have you seen it before, Alan? They also use it a lot in print design too, like as a still image to add some interest. But when you separate the red and the blue channels, the exact distance in the opposite direction from each other, you create that chromatic aberration effect. And it sort of creates a glow around the edges of things. So it's just a quick demonstration of why you need to be in RGB, what an additive workspace is, and a little intro to chromatic aberration. All right, so I'm going to go a little bit more into blending modes. I'm going to make a new layer. You can all just watch this part. You don't need to follow along. And I'm going to make it black. Okay. And below it, I'm going to put the picture of the tree. And I'm going to scale it up. Okay. Everybody ready for this? I'm going to change the color mode, the blending mode of the black layer to screen. And I'm also going to turn on my alpha here. I mean, transparency so that you can see it. Why are we not seeing the transparency? Okay. So anywhere the black overlays this layer, it's invisible. Screen makes anything black invisible. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Let me make the tree a little bit bigger so it fills the screen. Okay, so I'm going to throw some noise on here. And I'm going to crank up the contrast until it's black and white. There's my tree below. On this layer, if I change it to screen, now you can see all the white bits are still there, and anything that was black disappears. If I change my contrast, you'll start seeing less and less of something because of that blending mode. So that's what screen does. Removes black. And multiply, I think, removes white. So let me do the opposite. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to choose multiply. Yep. So now all the white parts are see-through and the black is there. Multiply removes white. Screen removes black. You're going to be using those two blending modes a lot as a graphic designer and a motion designer. I'm going to delete this layer and show you with one more thing. So I'm going to make a new red solid. Delete my tree. And I'm going to put a circle shape layer over top of it. Move that up here. And instead of a solid fill, I'm going to click the word fill and go to a radial gradient and click OK. I've got this little handlebar here. I can rotate my gradient or click to drag and expand it. I'm going to want to make it pure black by the time it gets to the edge. So, as we just learned, if I click and change the blending mode on this to screen, I keep my white gradation. And if I do multiply, the white becomes invisible, and now you see the black. Just a fast way to get some density, some impact with blending modes. And I'm going to get rid of this, make it back to normal, and show you one last thing. There's an effect in After Effects that is called, unmolt. I'm going to throw unmolt. You got to type in unmolt. And I'm going to put it on the sphere. It does the same thing as my screen. The black disappeared. And you may go, well, why'd you do that? Well, let me tell you something real quick. Every layer can only have one blending mode, okay? So by me using this effect to remove the black, I can still change the blending mode of this layer to get a different look. So I'd have to pick one that works off of white, but it still gives me some options. So actually, if I went to my gradient and I changed that white to something else, Let's see if I can do that. So I go to gradient fill. I'm going to click edit gradient down here. Yep, there we go. I'm going to change my white and make it blue. So now what should happen is it got rid of everything. Okay, wait, let me go back to normal. There's my blue. So if I change my blending mode to, let's say, hard light, I'll get a completely different effect of this blue blending with the red. So that's just a little thing where use your blending modes wisely because you only get one per layer. And if you're just removing black, unmolt may be the way to go. All right. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to check the chat real quick. We covered it a little bit, but I'm going to go over it again. So this is the deep version of it. We'll go layer, new, solid. We'll do blue. Okay, here we go. I'm going to add a letter A. And none of you have to do this because it's just a demonstration. I'm going to hide the layer below it. This grid that you're seeing here, this is the alpha grid, okay? I can turn it off and on by clicking this button right here. When you don't have it on, you don't see it. And it can cause you trouble. I'm going to click this off. Now I'm going to explain what everything sees that you're looking at here. So the gridded area is the alpha. It's invisible. This is negative space. Look at the black shape of the letter. This is positive space. Okay? And so this is the positive space. This is the negative space. Now, look incredibly closely at this red box going around the letter A. I'm going to zoom in so everyone can see it a little bit better. The grid is invisible. The black is positive space. This is negative space. This red box around the letter A is called a bounding box. Okay? That's unbelievably important. No matter what you put into After Effects, you're either going to have a square or a rectangle bounding box around your layer. It's always got to have 4 edges. That's why it's always a square or a rectangle, okay? And you may say, I don't care about bounding boxes. I don't care about alpha. I just want to animate. I'm going to show you exactly why you've got to know about alpha, bounding boxes, and positive and negative space. And here we go. Here's the demonstration. I'm going to throw a light effect on here. CC light rays. Just go drag it on my letter. Go drag it over. You could always use these crosshairs to click and drag to where you want something to be at with an effect. All right. Now, I'm going to turn on the layer below so we can see a little better. Let me change the color of the letter A. Might affect this a bit better. Let's try white. There we go. Now we can see what's happening. What the light rays effect does, I'll move it around a little bit. It casts a light beam from where it's hitting in the layer, okay? I'm going to put it back here at the top. It's hitting the bounding box and creating a hard edge to the effect. The number one troubleshooting step in After Effects, if you have a problem, is to pre-compose. I'm going to copy this effect. I'm just going to go Command-C and then delete it off that layer. To pre-compose, click on the layer or layers, as many as you need or want. It could be just one, it could be 100. Click on the layer or layers, select them, right-click, and then choose Pre-compose. And move all attributes. I'm going to name this something. I'll put PC at the end so I know it's a pre-comp. Click on Move All Attributes, and then hit OK. Now watch what happens. The red square is gone. It's now pushed to the full edges of the screen. So when I paste my effect on there, the effect goes all the way to the edges of the screen now, the way it should be working. All I had to do was pre-compose to get that to happen. That's why it's important to understand alpha, bounding boxes, positive and negative space. The bounding box that was invisible was stopping this effect from going all the way to the edge of the screen. Everybody get that? So when I pre-composed, it forced the edges to go the edges of my composition rather than the edges of the letter A. We're going to talk more about pre-comps and working professionally. You're going to have a lot of art in your animations. And one of the ways to stay organized is adding folders right here, the bins. I could call this one Seeks, short for my sequences. Throw my sequences in there. And I can make one for art, put my artwork in there. It goes on and on. Working clean and organized, it'll be easier to find files. So that's the first step. And then your project panel, you already know how to pre-compose. So when you get more and more complex with your animations, you'll have more and more pre-comps happening. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So as you can see, I've got folders set up. And if I made a sequences folder, I drag these sequences into there. I've got some missing artwork. That would be in the art folder. You know, I just put that stuff in there. Okay, now, this is what I'm talking about when I mean pre-comps. All of this is a composition. Inside that composition, I've got another pre-comp that's nested inside it. These are the images inside of it. So this is its own composition nested inside of here, which is nested inside of there. That's how pre-comps work. So you can have your different effects. Like I had to remove some green screen here. And I had to put the green screen on the files, then pre-compose them together so that I could put some effects on top of the pre-comp without affecting the green screen key. So you will be using a lot of pre-comps coming up. I'm going to close this. And this time, I'm going to open up one of the artworks. Okay. When I was working with Kelly's character, I could go glasses, eyes, mouth, head, and the artwork head, right-click and pre-compose those and call it head. That's going to keep all those layers together. And if I need to edit them, I just double-click inside. And I notice I forgot the glasses and the nose, so I'll cut those, paste them into the head, and there we go. I've shortened my layers in my timeline. And this is, sometimes you got to do it just to save space. Like here's all of my right arm. I could pre-compose all that together. And then move all attributes into new composition. And again, that frees up some more space. So pre-composing keeps your artwork together. Plus, it could also help when you're doing character rigs by forcing things to stay together. So it's a very useful thing to know how to do. All right, now we're on the last thing I wanted to show you. For this, I'm going to want everyone to follow along because this is a skill you'll be using and you'll be needing to know. So just set up your composition. And I'm going to turn off my transparency because it's bothering me. And I want everyone to add a letter C without any serifs. And just put it over on the left side of your screen. I'm going to have everybody duplicate it. Command D and move it over to the right side of the screen. So you've got one on the left, one on the right, then deselect them. We loosely looked at trim paths, and I'll demonstrate that again just by drawing a little line, giving it no fill and a stroke. Now I'm going to click the add and do trim paths on it. And with trim paths, we were using them in the character rig with Kelly. I tore down my trim paths here. Start is the first point, end is the last point. You could use it to adjust your stroke, or you could animate it. So I'm going to animate this one. I'm going to animate the end point of it just over time. And there you go. That's what a trim path is used for if you animate it, okay? Now, I'm going to take the first C, right-click, and choose Create Shapes from Text. So the first C, select it, right-click, choose Create Shapes from Text, and now we've got a shape layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my fill, turn on my stroke, make it a solid, something I can see color-wise. Okay. So everybody watch this. And then I'm going to go add trim paths. All right. Now, so we've got our trim path on here. I'm going to twirl down my trim path arrow, and I'm going to animate only the end. All right, very good. And watch what happens. So I'm going to start at 0. We'll go about a second and change it to 100. And then I'm going to set my render area. Hit the space bar. If you turn your letters into shapes and add a trim path to it, notice the trim path is going around both edges of the layer, okay? Can everybody see that? Do you see that, Ellen? Okay. So, some people use this. You know, sometimes you use it. But if there's a fill that needs to be involved, you're going to have to figure out how to bring in the fill. Look what happens when you use a trim path with a fill. You ready? Watch how weird this looks. See what it's doing? It's going from that point and colorizing it that way. It doesn't look professional. It looks sloppy. Got it? That's sloppy motion design. Most people don't do that. So, that's one way of bringing on a letter. While I'm here, I'm going to show you one more part. It is coming on from right here where that circle is. I don't want that. For me, as a designer, I'm going to say I want it to start on this point here on the outside edge of the C. So as I mentioned before, trim paths can be used to shorten or animate on and off. The offset you can use to change where that's going to start from. So I'm going to try and get as close to that corner as I can and see where it's coming out of now. Now it's coming out of that corner I wanted. So now I've got the motion I want. That's what the offset helps with. That's the first way of drawing on a letter with trim paths. Here is the second way. I've got this letter C over here as my reference, all right? With nothing selected, I'm going to trace it with the pen tool right down the middle. I'm going to give myself a stroke color that I can see, and I'm going to make it, maybe about 5. So I'm going to go, this is the important part, I'm going to go a little bit past it. So before it starts and after it starts. So I'm going to click outside, and you want to use as few path points as possible for the cleanest shape. I'm going to try and stay inside the middle of it. And then I'm going to adjust it with my arrow tool. A little bit. I'm not going to go too wild with it because I'm using a trackpad and I don't like trackpads, as you can tell from all this extra motion. Now my next step, I'm going to make it wider than the letter. So now it's longer and wider than the letter below it. And I'm going to rename this mat. There we go. And I'm going to add my trim path to it. And I'm going to animate the end again. So we'll click here to about there. And I'm just going to change this first frame to 0. Oh, 1 second, I did the wrong one. So you can see my trim path drawing on. I'm going to want this to reveal the letter, so that means I'm going to use it as an alpha mat. Remember, the mat goes over what you want to reveal. I want to reveal this letter C. I'm already in my modes. If you're not in your modes, here's your switches. Click switches and toggle modes. So here's your blending modes, which we covered earlier. Then track mats, which we've done before. The mats above. I click on the layer that's being revealed. And I choose alpha mat. So now it's drawing on the full letter, not both edges, with the fill. Does everybody see why this is the modern way of drawing on a letter as opposed to going around both edges? Because now you've got a faster motion, a cleaner motion, plus the fill as well. I've got one more thing to show you that ties all of this together, and then we'll move into lab time. I'm going to delete all these. So what I've got here, this is a thick and thin brush stroke. Okay, so I'm going to save this image. I'm going to bring it into After Effects. This ties it all together 100%. I'm going to bring in my brush stroke by going File, Import File. And I'm going to drag this into my timeline. I'm going to scale it up so we can see what's happening. Okay, so with nothing selected, I'm going to draw a layer over top of it. And I'm going to start on the thick end because the brush goes from thick to thin as you're lifting it off the surface you're painting on. So here's my brush, my pen. I'm going to click here, click about there, and then a little bit past here, trying to stay in the middle. It's going past, and I make sure it's thicker than what's below it. So there you go. It's thicker and longer than what's beneath it. So this is going to be my mat. I'm going to add my trim path to it. This was my start, so I'm going to animate the end because that's the motion I want. So I'm going to click here, set this to 0, move forward, set it to 100. And that's the motion animating on. I'm going to make it a little bit faster just by dragging them together. Okay, and next, I'm going to select them both, go back into my speed graph. This is my value graph. There's the speed graph, okay. They're both selected. I didn't easy ease them, but I can do it in here. That button right there is easy ease. Now they're eased. Or you can do it outside. So I'm going to want to speed out of the first one and slow into the last one because of friction as it drags across the canvas. So I'm going to turn off my speed graph. Now let's watch that motion. That's better. So, as we know, this is going to be the mat. I click on the layer below. I'm already in my modes. In the layer that I want revealed, I choose track mat. So now, I've got that brush stroke animating on. It's got thick and thin. It has texture, but I'm using a shape layer above it with the trim path as an alpha mat to get this effect. Does everyone see why it's important to understand trim paths and how alpha mats work? Because it can help you get some more complex animations quick and easy. So even though we are using a solid computerized looking graphic for the shape layer, we're using it to reveal something more organic and natural looking with that image of the brush stroke. So don't think of them as, clunky geometric shapes, because you can do some really beautiful organic things with them. You got some nice motion here. Just careful near your knees. A little bit of swaying of the feet will really be nice and help sell this weightlessness. We could animate some blinking of the buttons there. Love your art style. Like I said, just a little bit more life and subtlety to them in the limbs, because you're getting some there. So it's going to be, I see you know what you're doing with that. So just watch your motions aren't too subtle, because he's moving, and the faster something moves, the more subtle your motion attached to it, the more it becomes invisible. Very nice. Can't wait to see the rest of this. And I already know your thing's going to be inside here. We already talked about that, and I think it was the lens effect that we liked that was doing that. So you're in pretty good standing here. And like I said, we could have some stuff lit up there, give it a little pizzazz. We could even do that in After Effects. I'll show you real fast how to do that. So it's like the body has a ton of layers on it. If I right click and choose create shapes from vector, all the keyframes should still be there. Yep, see they're there. Didn't lose anything. Let's double check. And in the rigging is still the same. It's moving with your object. I mean the rest of your character. So look at how many layers are on that one. So this right here, this is a button. We lucked into it. Look at that. So if you're ever in here and you're like, oh, I wish I could change that, here's how. You got to go into your layer and find which thing it is. So I just turned it red inside of After Effects. And some people might go, hooray for you. But now I can throw a glow on that and try and isolate it to that red, or bring that red to its own layer. I mean, that'd be the faster, easier way of doing it. But I'm just seeing if I can whittle down the threshold on the glow on the body. See, that's lit up. That's too much. You'll notice the smaller the threshold, the more light stuff it's picking up. And now it's introducing a shadow. So I can't do that. But if I took this and hit copy and then eyeball hide it here. Let's deselect everything. Let me hit paste. No, that's not going to work. I'd have to duplicate this layer and then hide all the other layers but that one. But that would be the solution for that right there. Let me see something. Yep. But yeah, looking good. Very nice. Anybody have anything else they want to show? Let's check your rigging here. Okay. So, just a reminder. When you're rigging your character, the anchor points need to be where they're moving from. So the forearms have to be where the the elbow is going to be. They might even be better there, like on the edge instead of the center. So let's try that. See what I mean? You got to fill up that gap. But I think it will move better from that edge. So that's where that's going to be, as instead of the middle one. The hand, you're going to have to put the anchor point up where the wrist is. That might even be better here on the side where the actual wrist is. but that's all up to you. It might need to be in the middle. Same thing with the legs. You know, you parent them up the same way that the arms work. Like for the legs, it'd be where the knees are. Like this would be there. And then for the thighs, it'd be up near where it meets the hip. And the foot, it'd be down near where it meets the ankle. So that'd be the rigging for that. Very nice work, though. All right, since I got a little bit of time, I'm going to show you the long and boring way of getting this red button to work because it's attached to a million layers. If I wanted to do a glow on it. And it's going to be like so subtle, it's barely even worth noticing. But so here's the body. I'm going to duplicate it. Command D. On this one, I'm going to hide layer 4. And on the duplicate, I'm only going to show layer 4. That didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would. Okay, so now if I throw the glow on there, it'll affect just the button. And if I don't want to see this blue shape layer, I can just click that button right there to show or hide it. Right now I'm changing my bit depth. I'm in the project panel right here. The default is 8 bits per channel. If you hold down Alt or Option, you can get up to 32 bits. Now I can see my glow much better. There we go. See the difference? A little bit of light really adds some depth. I can adjust the threshold so it's a little bit more subtle. I can even make it flash by putting a wiggle, holding down Alt or Option, clicking on the glow radius. I hit E to get there. So let me click off. Now I can add in the expression. Let's say it wiggles twice a second in the amount of 300. And let's see what that does. Now it's flashing. See? I didn't need any keyframes to do that. Just a simple expression. Expressions can be your friends and save you a lot of time. Yeah, see, the way I teach motion design, I don't do a tutorial on here's how to make a waterfall. I teach the concepts, and when you learn the concepts, you do what you want with them. And, you know, it's really how you want to have these in your animation and how far you want to push them. And I'm here to help you push your work as far as you want. And I can do the same thing for each of these buttons. Give them different colors. I could even stack the colors on top to have them flash different colors like we did before. I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm just going to make a new comp inside of here. And I'm going to make the background red because the white is bothering me. So we'll pretend this circle, I'm going to give it no stroke. And a fill of red. Okay, so there's our first button. I'm not going to move the anchor point or anything like that. I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to change the color to, say, a light blue. If I put a wiggle on the transparency for the blue one, I hold down Alt or Option, I click here. It'll flicker the opacity of this layer, making it change colors. So I'll do 2 times a second. Let's try 350. Click out, hit the space bar. See? Now I've got a flashing light. So I can change this. Do I want it to flash more? I mean, yours, it's an astronaut. You want it to be subtle. But I'm going to do 4 and 550 just so we can see what's going to happen. See? So now I could say, okay, interesting. What if I change this blue to a gold? A little bit closer to red. See? It's all in what you want to do. You can combine your layers, use the expressions creatively. You know, sky's the limit with motion design. And this was all done without any keyframes. But I might want a nice light blue for a sci-fi look, because that was looking pretty. And while we're here, you got your color grid. From left to right, desaturated to saturated, up to down, light to dark. So, H for hue, here's where it is on the color wheel. If I click and drag, you see the slider bar start going up and down. S for saturation. If I click and drag, it'll go left or right. And then B for brightness, up or down in my color grid. So if I want this to be a little bit more desaturated, I just go a little more over that way, like such. And I hit the space bar. And there you go. And since we're here and I'm filling time, I'll put an adjustment layer in my timeline with the glow on the adjustment layer. That way, no matter what's below it, we'll have the glow, meaning these 2 buttons. And here's a little advanced preview since we're talking about light effects. You want to be in 32 bits per channel when you're doing light effects like glows or light rays. You go to your project panel. Down here, you hold down Alt. The default is 8 BPC, 8 bits per channel. Click again, you go to 16. Click one more time, you're at 32. And look at that glow. Nice, beautiful, healthy glow with more dynamic range. Now it's looking slick. All right, I got a little bit of time, so I'm going to try a light effect just to spruce things up. I'm going to put it on the adjustment layer so it affects everything. Let's see what light rays does. Oh, wow, look at that. That's wild. That's very sci-fi looking. There you go. That's light rays. I mean, light burst. Let's try light rays. I'm just on all these onto... see, that's because I didn't pre-compose it. We don't need that effect anyway. If that's a little bit too much flickering going on, I can just adjust my expression. Let's change this to 150, back down to 2. So you don't want to give anybody any issues with your light effects. There we go. A little bit of sci-fi fun with very little effort. That's why I say get your ideas, or if you see something online that inspires you, send me a link to it and I'll help you break it down. That's what I'm here for. But that's a long way from those flat, computerized geometric shapes we had. It's got some fall off of focus and light and some glow. It's a lot more organic. So don't look at them as geometric shapes, because you can do a lot of things with them to make them not look like that. All right. Speaking of geometric shapes, this one goes out to Ellen. I'm going to draw a circle. This was kind of almost the color of your eye, right? That you had for your character? Or was it yellow?
I think it's a little more green. But
okay.
Yeah.
Make it a little bit more green. So if you want to do a quick eye blink and you've got like a round geometric shape like this, I'm going to put the anchor point in the center. And it's a little off here. So if I hold down Command and double click on the pan behind tool, now it's in the center. So if I non-uniformly scale it, click that off, I can get a blink or an exaggerated look of, that. So I'm going to click on my stopwatch and I'm going to do a blink. So remember, one of the 12 principles of animation, anticipation, the blink goes down. So I'm going to have the eye grow a little bit, like a little bit of a squash and stretch. And then I'm going to go to where the blink would happen. And I'm going to not fully get rid of it. So it looks like an eyelid. And then I just copy my first keyframe again. And I'll put it like right about here. There you got your blink. And you could just grab this, copy and paste it. Oops. And wherever you put your playhead, you got a blink. Like such. And that was all like 2 minutes worth of time. And sets anticipation. If I click the word scale and I hover over, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Now I've got slow in, slow out, which is one of the 12 principles of animation. We've got a little bit more organic motion happening. So that's 2 of the 12 principles for the price of 1. The anticipation, where the eye stretches up, gets the viewer's eye ready for the main motion, which is the blink. So that's anticipation. And then we easy ease the keyframes, which is the same as slow out, slow in for the other one of the 12 principles. So I'm just going to mess around with some stuff. Let's see if I make this shape layer. Just experimenting here. I'm just trying to keep all these effects as similar as possible in their motion and their direction as I combine them. I'm just experimenting here. And again, I'm just moving this to adjust my gradient in After Effects. And again, I'm just filling up lab time. I'm just showing you this was this was a computerized looking H, and I just threw a couple effects on it to make it a lot less, generic looking. And little by little, you just build on your ideas and try new things to get new looks. If I had artwork for like the face of a monster, I could put these same effects on and get the fiery face of a monster. You could test your ideas out on anything and then apply them to your final artwork. So it's another way of just keeping the ball rolling week to week. Yeah, just keep sending me your questions and doing little by little each week. And by the time the first assignment's due, you'll have something pretty nice to look at. And again, if anyone has any questions for the last few minutes, just let me know. And for those interested, I'm going to show my settings. I precomposed this solid layer, and I put a turbulent noise on it. Here's the settings I used. Bear in mind, I was just messing around. And I put an expression on there. Here is the expression. Time, asterisk, time 250. I use this same exact amount on each layer that I put that expression on the evolution. And for the transform on all of these, I have it moving upwards. So it's going from 0 on the Y to minus 2000 on the Y on all the layers. So that's my displacement map. And I have it in my main composition hidden. And on this layer is where I've got my displacement map. But first, I did rough and edges. I did the same time expression there. I did the same animation from 0 to minus 2000 on the Y. There's the rest of my settings. Turbulent displace, same thing, 0 to minus 2000. Same expression on the evolution. There's the rest of those settings. And here's what I did for my glows at 32 bits per channel. And then my displacement map is referencing the pre-comp. And there's the settings I have for it. This is the layer it was in my layer stack. And I chose effects and mask. And here's the rest of my settings.